Right, guys, welcome, welcome, welcome. Hope everybody is well. Monday morning, 9 o'clock, slightly later. Obviously, got to work life around the school runs. For anyone who's got kids, will understand. Yeah, but obviously that's the beauty of what obviously how we trade and why so obviously we went through everything yesterday. Let's just have a little look at how markets opened. So for example, pound was the biggest one. We had a nice big gap here on pound. Probably should have been holding this, but I like to take profits off the table in the mornings on a Monday especially. I want to build up my wheat steady, especially after the few weeks that we've had. I've been very, very happy this morning. So yeah, we should carry on. Should be a good week this week. I'm feeling good about it. Yeah. So we obviously had on pound here, we had a massive gap. We had like an eighty pip gap to the downside. Euro, big gap too. What was euro? Euro was 40 pip gap. Aussie, little gap too. But obviously everything's starting to recover. Now, one of the reasons why obviously I've held off or taken profits a little bit earlier, and lots of you will probably ask, yeah, but it's running, it's going the right way. Remember to segregate everything, all right? So your goal, and it's the only goal, it's not to make the most beautiful trade. I play obviously a lot of golf, and obviously one of the most famous sayings is there's no pictures on a scorecard, so you can play rubbish and obviously score good. So obviously think about trading a bit like that, where you've always got to make sure that you're keeping, and obviously this is one thing that's been very, very kind of clear for me to see from obviously going to speak to different hedge funds, and it implies risk and is always their number one, view. They don't they might look at a perfect trade, but they're going to analyze the risk more than what they're going to actually analyze the trade. So, one of the risks that I can see here is that, yields obviously gapped up, and obviously dollar. Initially gapped up, but we crushed straight back down. All right, there was no continuation. It was, straight as London opened. We've obviously had this tail off, which is kind of what we were speaking about yesterday. All right. So obviously one thing that we always have to go through is there enough in the market to push, something higher, all right, or to push, something lower? And we did highlight yesterday these two areas. We obviously, yes, dollar pumped up, held 98, but obviously what's going to happen? There's not enough action in the market to pump this up to 98,500. Remember, some kind of news has to come out for this to obviously stop, being support, and then obviously this then becomes, our kind of area of interest. Yeah. All right, so we won't have that until tomorrow. So what does that mean? We're going to be stuck in this range here. Yeah. All right. So if dollar pumps up, there's not enough to take it higher. So chances are there's a higher probability. Remember, in trading, it's all about probabilities. There's a higher probability that obviously, 98 was going to be tapped. That's exactly what happened. And obviously, I'm very, very happy. We did very, very well. Gold, I stayed away from this morning, just purely because the only gold trade that I could see was to the downside. Now that's going against, GBP USD or USD, AUD USD. All right. And so I didn't really want to take that trade, although it would have worked. I didn't want to take it because obviously, yeah, the highest probability was it pushing to the downside. But then the, safer option for a Monday morning is to trade currencies, and obviously that's one thing that I wanted to do. USD as well was obviously telling me it was going to come to the downside. However, look what's happened. Nothing's happened. All right, because yen at the moment is a pair that we need to be very, very wary of. Like I've been mentioning, there's two areas that I want to trade it from, here and here. That's it. I'm not really interested in it in between here. This is kind of no man's land because it could quite easy carry on creeping up, carry on creeping up, and then we get this massive candle again, into this area. Then it carries on creeping up again, and everyone's right, you know what, we're on a run, massive candle. All right, that's what's been happening. So we do need to be aware of that as we are trading it. So that's like a bit of a roundup of the pairs. I'm actually out, you can see here if this obviously loads, boom, should load. Let's resync. Should load. So very happy. Three out of three this morning. I have closed out. It just needs to catch up. Try one more time. See if it comes up. There we go. We've come up. So happy here. Great start. Solid start. The goal of this week is green. We want it all green. 100% win rate as well, which is great. Do I wish I'd have held? Yeah, yeah, I do. Especially obviously pound. I do think we're going to come in and tap this area. I do think that we're going to potentially, come up and well, yeah, Euro closing all of the apps. I think Aussie's closed it, so we should see it start to tail off a bit potentially. But yeah, let's wait and see. Obviously, what's happens here. So right, I've got one question here from Alex. Why has market gapped up like this? Was there any escalation on the weekend that dollar opened stronger? I mean, obviously, like we mentioned yesterday, I haven't properly looked into the escalation, side of it. I was more studying where obviously yields were, dollar, and the probability. But obviously, we do have some expectations here, in regards to obviously, markets. Obviously Trump going to speak with China potentially. He's going to be quite active this week, so obviously we're going to have to watch out. We also have to be always keeping an eye on oil. Oil obviously gapped up open, so there seems to be a little bit of escalation appetite in the atmosphere. Remember, you can always judge the escalation by oil, all right? But obviously, is it or is it just markets, kind of having the initial expectation. Could be that orders were held over the weekend. Carried on holding. They closed during Asia. Remember, we do have three different markets: Asian market, UK market, US market. So that could potentially be it. It could be that what there was hopes of an escalation. And obviously they're looking into de-escalation, but they also want to close out at the right price, so yeah, there's so many different reasons why. Does anyone have any more questions? Any more for any more? Happy to answer anything. Like I'd said, great start to the morning. Hopefully you guys as well watched my video of the donation from the boot camp yesterday. Do you guys want me to do another boot camp for potentially middle of June? And then obviously you can give me some ideas. Just obviously put yes in the chat if you want another boot camp. Yes, yep, sounds good. Okay, perfect. And it's brilliant too. It's good that obviously it's raising money for charity. I mean, 3.2K is epic. Like I was chuffed to bits, chuffed to absolute bits. So yeah, all right, brilliant. Well, if there's no more questions, two boot camps a month. Yeah. Well, what I'll do, I'll plan a boot camp for sort of middle of June, so maybe the second week in June. If you want to message me any ideas that you want me to go over, or I can just do a big Q&A. We can obviously open up the chat. What I was thinking of doing as well was doing a bit of a mastermind. So rather than doing one big boot camp, I was thinking of doing potentially splitting it up into blocks of 10, so obviously 10 people opening up, so obviously you can speak, ask questions, we can go through it. However, I don't normally do that because if there's like we were having 50 to 100 people in it, I don't normally do that because it can get a bit messy. But yeah, if you've got any ideas for next month's boot camp, message me. I'm obviously happy to do it. But yeah, apart from that, great start to the morning. Hope everyone's made a bit of money this morning, and yeah, let's make sure that we'd smash it. So have a good one, everyone, and yeah, let's bring on this afternoon. Have a good one, guys.